Are you on edge? We live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of the Edge of Everyday podcast, which drops bi-monthly on all your favorite podcast platforms. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and tough talk about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. Real talk with real people that sparks provocative invitations to leap out of what's safe. Sandra Bargman, on the Edge of Every Day. Thanks for listening. Hello, everyone. I'm Sandra Bargman, and welcome back to the Edge of Every Day, now streaming on all your favorite podcast platforms and at maximizeyou.life. Are you a change maker? Do you walk between worlds, between cultures, between systems? If you answered yes to any of these questions, the Edge of Every Day is the place for you. In a nutshell, this podcast is about pushing boundaries and exploring rough edges through conversations and shared stories with friends and colleagues. It's my hope that we can begin to understand our edges. And what I mean by edges is those places where we are fearful. Those places where we are resistant to change, those places where paradox and contradicting identities live in our beliefs and in our understandings, both individually and collectively. We live in edgy, challenging times, and we cannot keep looking away from the ugly, from the difficult. Silence is no longer an option. Life isn't black or white, it's both, and I want to talk about that. I want to face the tension of paradox, and I want to engage in the hard conversations. I want to explore the rough edges between our light-filled brilliance and our dark, shadowy corners. Because the more we recognize our own edges and get real about them, the more we can help others to do the same, and that, I fully believe, can help to change the world. So, thanks again for tuning in. Today we are live in the Hive with Dr. Marion Somers, Geriatric Care Manager, Professor, and author of the book, Eldercare Made Easier, 10 Steps to Help You Care for an Aging Loved One. How have approaches to elder care and aging for Americans changed over time? How does fear of aging and death contribute to confusion around elder care? How can we stay present to the death and dying process as simply being a part of life? As Dr. Marion says, young people are acts of nature, but beautiful old people are works of art. I'm so excited to dive in, but before we do, let me share Dr. Marion's bio. Marion Somers, PhD, aka Dr. Marion, is an award-winning, nationally recognized geriatric care manager. For over 4 decades, Dr. Marion has provided care for more than 2,000 elderly clients while she owned and operated a thriving geriatric care management practice. As a leading expert on elder care issues, topics, and solutions, she's been featured on The Today Show, Eyewitness News, in The Wall Street Journal, in Newsday, and on a host of national radio programs. As founder and CEO of Dr. M Media, Marion completed a national 50-city bus tour, which was part of a national campaign called 3 in 4 Need More, which was based on a study that said that 3 out of 4 Americans need long-term health care, but are unprepared for it. In her book, Eldercare Made Easier, she draws from those decades of experience to offer 10 practical steps to help you navigate your caregiver's journey. We're thrilled to have you here on the Edge of Everyday podcast. So thanks for joining me. I like to tell my listeners how I know my guests. I met Dr. Marion at my birthday party last year. She is, well, I'll let you tell the story. Every year at my birthday, I have, well, I should say every year, the last 5 years on my birthday, I've had a fantastic birthday party for my community here in the Catskill Mountains in my salon space. My loyal listeners know I have a salon space called The Plum. And I invited one of my community members, a shout out to Elizabeth Tannenbaum. And Elizabeth brought Dr. Marion with her, and she and I just hit it off. So tell that story.
It was a very exciting move. A moment to meet you is like watching a flower bloom before you, and all of a sudden, all kinds of energy is coming out, and there is so much joy. And I'm meeting a whole bunch of people. The only one I knew was Liz, and I got introduced to you, and it was instant
It
connection.
was
But the
instant
whole
connection.
community, the whole community was beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
and
That's great.
and I was visiting with my sisters, and they said, "Come on, come along." And I'm
Oh,
so grateful that I did.
I am too. You and I just, I felt the same way about you the minute I met you. And we were birthday twins. And when I found out that you, the work that you did, I completely was engaged and I was like, oh, elder care, this is so important to me because you may recall that I have done elder care. I mean, by no means to any level comparable, but I have worked with elderly in a variety of capacity, doing theater work, doing companion work, just making good friends with elderly people. And I have to say elderly now, I can't say senior because I'm officially a senior.
That's quite a transition in itself.
I'm telling you, I remember when that card, I'm now a card carrying member when it showed up in my mailbox. I was like, oh, you bitches.
They caught you.
But yes, but anyway, I was just so thrilled to hear about the work that you did. And subsequently, listeners, she and I have had many, many phone conversations leading up to having her on the show here about the death and dying process and being present to the caregiving process and how important it is in our world today. So we're going to get into all of that stuff. But before we do that, I'm going to ask you the question that I ask every single one of my guests. What identity do you lead with, Dr. Marion?
Is that my day in and day out living? My
However you
introducing
want to
myself?
answer it. This is why I
I
love this question because it can be so many different things. Identity is so fluid. Our understanding of it is so fluid. So
I
you
I
answer
am
however you want.
I am basically a very shy person.
Mm,
And when I meet people, I just want to know about them. It never occurs to me that people would be interested in me and what I do. So I ask questions, and then I ask questions, and they respond. And before you know it, we're deep in conversation, and it
mm.
just flows. It's just easy, and it flows, and it's very comfortable. But I never lead with me because I'm me to different people. And I find that very interesting and very exciting. And it keeps me fluid, and also gives me a perspective of how somebody perceives me in a way that I might not have perceived myself. And I feel like that's my own renewing of myself without anybody making a fanfare about it. Does that make sense?
It completely
It's the
makes
first time I've
sense.
ever said it that way.
Well, there's many levels upon which I adore this answer, but the one I'm going to focus on has to do with the type of person that I feel can stay present to the death and dying process, is the one who is the deep listener, is the one who doesn't need to push themselves forward, is the one that wants to draw out the other and to create the safe space for others to feel comfortable to do that. And I have noticed that in you, and yet you've in private you have shared wonderful stories with me. So to your point about being many things to many people, I can see how that's true as well.
It's also when you're with somebody who they become aware that these may be their final moments or hours or days.
Mm.
There's so much that they want to say, and many things that they have not said or shared, or hurts or joys or loves that they've had that nobody knew about. And all of these things come to the surface. And I sometimes feel like I'm eavesdropping on somebody's intimate life. And but
They want to
it's for
share.
many, it's the first time that they've shared something that is significant, important. It made them feel whole. It made them feel cherished, and all those wonderful things that come along when you're in love with somebody, or think you're in love with somebody, or you're finding out they don't love you anymore. All of those
Mm.
transitions that we go through, and people are so reluctant to talk about these things. But at the end of life, if that is still a pain or if it is still a joy, they want to share it because this is their last
Their
opportunity
last,
to share,
yeah.
their last
And
hurrah.
yeah, the proverbial hurrah. And, and I'm a firm believer that they know it. I mean, that there's a high aspect of who we are that isn't within agreement of this moment of leaving. And so being aware of how close I am to that veil. That's so beautiful. And it's a great seg into, I want to hear some stories about being present to people that are passing. But before I get to that, I want to ask you to tell the story of how you came, I know that it's about, wanting to hear people's stories, your willingness and your eagerness to pull people's stories out of them. But it's a rare individual who connects with the elderly when they're young. So tell that story. I heard you tell it in another space. So please tell the story of how you were sparked about dealing with the elderly, being present to the elderly, and then making it your life's work, and becoming, a manager and a champion of the elderly.
It really goes back to my ancient history when I was 10 years old. We lived in Harlem. We were poor, dirt poor, unbelievably poor, where in the winter there was no soles left on my shoes. And I'd get corrugated boxes and cut them so that I had something to separate me from the sidewalk. But we lived in a tenement, a 5-story tenement, and we were the only family in the building that had children. The rest of the people were ancient. I thought they were ancient. I was 10 and they were maybe 50, 60, 70, 80. But I thought everybody was ancient. And I found, well, there were two things. One, I was always hungry, and they were always willing to at least give me a piece of bread without my begging or asking. And I would do groceries for them or clean their sink or something, do something in exchange, because my personal ethic was always, you don't take, you give. But if it can be an equal exchange, and this is a 10-year-old mentality, it's okay. So I went grocery shopping and did all kinds of odds and ends for them. But I found the most important thing for me was, it was like going to the library and having somebody open a book and tell you a story that is in the book, except the book is the person before me. And I would notice as I'm listening to them that they would glow, that it would almost like their wrinkles would disappear. And I'm thinking, and if I look up, it's because I imagining that person in front of me, and I would see them glowing. I would see them not be this grumpy old lady who needed eggs from the grocery store, but she was like a 17-year-old, and she was giggling when she was telling the story. And I thought, and I didn't know the word transition, but I would think, well, how can people be old and ugly and right before me like magic get sparkly and alive, and they sat up a little straighter. And I saw these transitions in them. And I found that whenever I spoke to any elderly person, and by elderly, and when you're 10 years old, if somebody was
Everybody
50
is.
or 60, everybody,
Oh,
everybody's old.
30.
So I realized that people are not just what you see. That was the big aha for me. What you see before you is not the person. It's the image that they present to the rest of the world. But they
Mm,
are really full of stories and history and hurts and loves and
yeah.
kindnesses and meanness, and they're filled with all of this mush in them. And I was loving it because it was better than going to the movies. And go to the movies, it cost me a quarter. Now I go to with one of my elderly. I get live
Get it
entertainment
for
for 20
free.
minutes half, and
Oh,
and it was wonderful. And but the bottom line was I was always getting fed by somebody, half an apple or whatever, because these were poor people. They didn't have that much to share, but whatever they had to share, they gave with the heart and soul. And
mm,
then I'd get a story about the apple. It was not just the apple, it was the apple orchard that they had in
yes.
their youth.
Yeah.
And I saw them not as who they are right before me, but they had this whole history. And I had visions of farmlands and the old country. And I lived in Harlem, and the old country could be any country in the world because it, Harlem is still to this day a conglomerate of
Yes,
of
very
nationalities,
international.
and
Yeah.
everybody is trying to fit in, and everybody is really doesn't know how to do them. And then watching them maneuver their neighbors, who this one speaks one language, this one speaks another language. They don't speak the same language, and yet they have these long conversations, which I
Yeah.
found amazing
Yeah.
because people want to share.
Who they
People
are.
want you to know who they are. So this is how I learned to just listen, because
Yeah.
when you listen,
Well,
people understand
but
that you
no, I
really are listening.
disagree. I disagree. You have the temperament for it. I disagree. Not everyone is wired that way. Absolutely not everyone is wired to be. I mean, I remember I hung out with old people when I was little, and I know my grandmother told me she didn't understand why I wanted to hang out with her that way and hear all of her stories. Not everyone is wired to, and as we get older in our society, um, it, it, I think we lose that because we don't. And this leads brilliantly into my question about how elder care has changed and our relationship to aging and elder care, particularly in the United States. People, we don't value the elders in the United States in the way that we used to, or the way that more traditional communities did and still do. But here in the United States, you know, I remember I would tell friends as a young person that we were going to our grandparents, and they'd be like, "Ugh," and I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And yeah, why do you think elder care has shifted in today's world, particularly in the United States? Why do you think it has gone from more of a stay at home, the elders were honored, they were cared for, and then we went through this transition slowly where they were put into not so good places, more poorhouses to be taken care of. And then as we became a little bit more affluent, thanks to industrialization, people could afford other kinds of elder care. What's your thoughts on where we are in the elder care process and how people think about um, aging and their being present to diving into the elder care system?
I can tackle that from several perspectives, but
Mhm.
mostly we are so electronically oriented that people would rather sit at a computer or their phone and feel that sense of intimacy than to spend the time with a real person in a real luncheon atmosphere, or sitting next to somebody in the bus or the train, and talking to the person next to you. We are losing, what I'm seeing is we're losing the sense of talking person to person. I would
Yeah,
much rather sit and hold somebody's hand and talk to them
right.
than
And
talk
do you
this way.
think
But
I mean,
this works. But we're in a fast society, and in the fast society, we don't have we think we don't have the time. And I say we absolutely must make the time
mhm,
to do the personal interactions where and when it's possible and when it's comfortable on both sides.
yeah, well, don't have the time is a mouthful. We, of course, have the time. But when I hear you say that, I don't think that's just elderly people. I think that's people in general, that technology has isolated people from each other. But specifically for me, I feel as though, and I want your thoughts on this or correct me if I'm wrong. My observation is that people are uncomfortable and somewhat put off um, by the aging process. They're fearful of it. They don't want to stay present to it. They don't know how. I mean, when I was doing companioning work, I would see people come in and speak to, and people who also worked in elder care facilities talk to these elders like they were idiots. 5 year, the sense of honoring them and keeping them engaged. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
When you find even doctors will talk to the person who brought the elderly in, but they won't talk directly to the elderly and say, whatever, ask them whatever the questions are, and not ask them, but they will ask who has ever brought them in as the now authority figure. And
Ah,
I'm an elderly person at this stage in life, and I love every moment of it. And I'm grateful. I wake up in the morning and I say, hey, I've been given another day. Take an example. Grandma is aging, and there are things that have to be done, and you keep putting it off and putting it off. You need to go to a lawyer and make sure all the paperwork is done, so
mhm.
that is, if there is an incident that you, as the person in authority, if grandma should lose capacity, that you have the right to make decisions. But when you sign these papers, you're not signing away your life. You're letting the universe, you're acknowledging that I now need some help, I need some assistance, and I'm going to do it in a very practical, pragmatic way. If I need new housing, then you start investigating housing long before the need is there, so you know what area you might want to go to, or the amount that you can afford. You can't go above a certain amount. So you look at these, so you start zeroing in what you might feel is the most appropriate next step for you. And if it's physical things, then you just stay aware of what is happening to your body, because your body is always telling you this now needs some attention. If your teeth are falling out, that means you should get your dental work done before you have to go to dentures. I mean, there are so many parts of the body that are telling you what to do next, but we have to listen.
Yeah.
And the listening part is not easy, because
So
we
what
have
do
to
you tell the
acknowledge.
people that come in that are there to take care of that person? I'm not talking about the aging person. I'm talking about the caregivers. That's who I want to hear about.
The caregivers are the ones, when they see the potential problem of the person that they may be responsible for, either morally responsible for or legally responsible for, or because they are a relative or a friend, then you bring down whatever the questions are, whatever the concerns are, you bring it to the open and say, look, I'm seeing that this is a change in you. What can
Mm,
we do to help you? If you need a cane, we'll talk about going to the drugstore and seeing what the prices are. You go to the right doctor, so that you get a cane that is appropriate for you and it's fitted for you, so you're not leaning over instead of standing erect and keeping your posture in place. You look at what is happening and you address it. You don't shove it under the rug, because I say to my people, all you do when you shove things under the rug is you have lumpy rugs, and you
Mhm.
will fall and trip over the things that you ignore. If you don't deal with it now, you're going to deal with it down the road. So I make it a time component for them. You know, if you're an adult and you're taking care of a senior in your family or a neighbor, whatever that responsibility is, put it on the agenda.
Yeah.
And whatever the agenda is, address it. Address it both ways. You don't make choices for people without talking to them about it, getting their permission to go forward, and getting them totally engaged. Because when the elderly people or the senior is engaged with their own care and they know somebody cares enough to take those steps, they are usually very grateful. They may be a little annoyed with you because they feel their own sense of independence is slipping away. And you address that. I know you're concerned about X, Y, and Z, whatever the particular issues are, and
Mm.
then you address them, because people, no matter how old they are, really want to be do they really want to do the right thing. They just don't know what the right thing is. So you
Right.
say, this, and this can be done. This, and this is not appropriate. You have no money to do that, so we have to
Do
compromise,
this. Yeah.
make adjustments.
I'm going to move into your book, Eldercare Made Easier. Dr. Marion's 12 Steps to Help You Care for an Aging Loved One. I have it right here, signed by Dr. Marion. And this is an incredible book, listeners. I didn't read the whole thing, but I'm handing it to my husband who is dealing with elder care for his mom. I wish I had had this book when I was dealing with my mom when she was dying, and my father who needed some elder care. This breaks down every single step so completely and so concisely and clearly. And there are beautiful stories that Dr. Marion shares in between. There are resources. There is a whole resource website, lists of websites. There's appendix that talk about alternative therapies and ways of dealing with um, keeping your elder engaged. But, again, I stress that this book is so thorough that it is a complete and utter map for the entire process. There's nothing you can think about that's not in this book about your elder.
Everybody has a gift, and
Mm.
when they know the end is near, they want to leave a memory of themselves with other people. And it's amazing. You may know somebody for ages and ages and ages, and but you don't know all their gifts. And this little boy was at the point of death, and he knew that his time was limited, but he never asked the why question. Why me? He didn't feel sorry for himself. He just wanted to sing. And he made up songs, and he made up poems, and nobody knew that he had poetry in him. And at the end of his life, he was able to share something that was so personal, so intimate, and those around him were crying, not only for the potential loss of this child, but also that they never knew he had all of these other energies and talents within himself. And
Mm.
that's what I try to get across to people. Find out what makes that person tick, what makes them happy, what makes them sad, what makes them feel most proud about themselves. And it may be something very insignificant to the rest of us, but it's very significant to that person. And that's the most important when you're dealing with somebody who is exiting this life. I personally don't believe in death. It is
Mhm.
simply a transition. It's simply
Couldn't
a
have said it better.
transition.
Yes.
I have been holding somebody's hand, and we're having a conversation that one might have at the end of one's life. And I could just feel and have them say something. I am going. I am going. I am. And then they stop. And you're holding this hand that was sending energy 30 seconds earlier, then all of a sudden they have stopped being. And in the room, when the transition happens and they have passed to whatever comes next, it is mostly peaceful when they have had the opportunity of letting go of what is important to them, not what you think is important for them, but what's important to them. And they're telling you, they will always tell you at the end what's important. And when somebody has made that transition and you are either present or you're holding their hand, which to me is the greatest gift you could possibly have, the energy in the room physically changes. And I just have had too many experiences like that. But before I go on to anything more, when you have somebody who is very sick, or maybe on the edge of dying, always hold their hand. Always hold their hand. Even if the doctors and everybody in authority say they are comatose and they can't hear, they can hear. They can't always respond, but they can hear. And what I'm taking this, you put their hand in yours and you hold their hand, because their hand will be ice cold, usually. But when you put their hand in yours and their hand gets the same temperature as your hand, they know somebody is here with them. They may not know it's you, but they know somebody's here. And then you could feel their hand relax. And then they're ready to make their transition. And they do. And the thing is, before they get to that point, I always make sure we have gone over everything that they want to say, because those couple of minutes, couple of hours, or couple of days before somebody makes their transition is the most important moment in their life. And I always want it to be happy and peaceful and calm and then complete.
Indeed.
And I, it is a beautiful moment, and people should not avoid it.
I loved what you said. You made a suggestion in the book, and I've only been with one person, and thankfully, it was an amazing gift. I've only experienced someone passing once, and it was my own mother. And I was holding her hand, and I knew that she could hear me. And it was, so painful and yet so beautiful. To your point, there's nothing, and you do experience all those, the energy in the room and the enormity of it, and you can't not be present to that. But you talked about in the book, in this chapter, Let It Go, about planning a funeral with your your loved one. And I loved that that was included, because my mother asked me to do that with her.
Mhm.
I was in my first year of seminary, and I planned her funeral with her, and I helped write her obituary and her two obituaries. And, we went through her clothing, and who was going to get what, and her jewelry and I had a little fashion show with her about what clothing I should keep, and go around the house and let's look at things and what's important and who should have what vase for a portion of my ashes. I mean, it was extraordinary, all the rituals, and they're in here.
Mhm.
And I loved that so, so much. Had you, with any of your clients, did you ever engage in helping them plan their funeral with them?
There was one woman, she was very heavy set, or had been a very heavy set lady, but she was ready to pass. So she asked me to deal with all the complications of the funeral and what have you. And just like you had just mentioned, we did all of those things. But when it came to what she was going to wear, she had an enormous wardrobe. And we went through this wardrobe and we were going like this, and we're like 3 hours, and I'm enough already. Uh, and she's having a ball. She says, "Nah, I want that. I don't want that. I don't." And so she finally picked this ugly yellow dress. I mean, it was really ugly from her heavy, her heavy self. So I said, "All right." I took it out and I said, "Well, I want to make sure it doesn't have any moth holes in it." And I'm looking at it and I said, "You have so much beautiful stuff. Why are you picking this? Why, are you emotionally attached to this?" She says, "No." She says, "I just don't want them breaking my arm to get me into some skinny dress." She said she said, "You can get an elephant in there. They won't have any trouble dressing me." And I thought to myself, this is life.
This
This
is
is
life.
life. This is life.
This
So
is
I said
good.
to her, so I said to her, Lahayim, you are going to get the dress that you want, and you are going to go out looking like
Like
a princess or a fashion star.
a
I said, let's
queen.
let's
Yes.
let's go through this again. And she picked out a beautiful outfit, right down the shoes and everything. In her religion, you don't go with shoes.
Right.
But she said, I want the shoes with me. I don't want
Oh,
them on, but I want to go
but
with
I
those
want them
shoes.
in there.
And the two of us, here she is on death's door, and we're both giggling. And
Oh,
she said, what a wonderful farewell this is going to be. And I
yeah.
said, we're going to have a wonderful time because we're going to reminisce about all of your stories. She said, no, 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 not all the stories. She said, I told you some, you are never, you are committed. She said, before the powers that be, you are committed not to tell those stories. I said, I know the difference between those stories and the ones that the families can tolerate. I said, I'm good about it. It
Oh
was so
my
adorable. It
Lord.
was so
Yeah.
you can't help loving somebody who you know so intimately, on a personal level, and they open their hearts, they open their minds, they open their souls, they open their fears, and they give so freely.
Yeah.
And that's what life is all about.
I mean, I'm just always so fascinated by um, people who are afraid of death and dying and loss and the grieving process, the people who don't allow themselves to grieve well. And that's what I always circle back to. And that's sort of what I was conjuring earlier in our conversation is what can be done to continue to hold space for people to step more uh, strongly into being okay or being willing to not be so fearful of the whole process and to embrace it and to see that it is simply a part of life. It is just simply an opening another door, a new birth.
Grieving is such a personal, individual experience,
Mm,
and some people don't grieve immediately.
yeah,
And there sometimes a year or a year and a half or longer will go by, and then all of a sudden the sense of the transition that they have experienced with a friend or a relative will hit them.
yeah.
And with wisdom, they go to a private place. I always go to the ocean. The
Oh,
ocean
well,
and
yes.
I are
Yeah.
intimate with those kind
There's
of
no
issues.
greater place than the ocean to sit in the vastness of life. Mother Sea. Again, folks, this book, I mean, everything from the legal processes that you need to step through, how you communicate and get the ball rolling with your loved one. And as Dr. Marion had mentioned, just being honest and getting clear on some of what's happening. There is a step on um, equipment and all of the different pieces of equipment that you might need with your elder. There's an entire step dedicated to financial issues, getting all your financial papers put together, signed, have that talk with your elder. Make sure that they're clear, that you're clear on all of those things.
That gives people such peace of mind, such
Totally.
peace of mind.
Yeah. And hiring help, finding mobility in disability, all of the legal matters. So again, there are steps on every aspect of caregiving, and in these final processes, there are appendix for all the different types of things that you might want to do and explore with your elder, fitness, alternative therapies, you name it. And then she has this she even has charts. I mean, the resources are endless in here, just
I had a lot of fun with
endless.
the charts.
I bet you did. I bet you it's unbelievable. I mean, this is a one-stop shopping event here.
Caregivers in the United States, the statistics are 27% of them die before the person that they're caring for, because you're not always caring for an elderly person. It could be a spouse, it could be a disabled child, it could be many other reasons why. I, as a caregiver, and that's who I am, I take care of myself, because no matter who I get at the other end of the call, they get 100% of me, because I am ready.
Yeah.
I am ready.
I mean, this is really a must-have book for anyone that's engaging in this process, that does this work as a caregiver, that's found themselves needing to step into the process and they're overwhelmed with what they're facing. And I mean, even if you know kind of what you're doing, you
Get
may bump
help,
up to yes, you may bump up,
get
get help.
support, and don't ignore your local community. If the person's got Parkinson's, call up the Parkinson's Association and find out what they have available as a resource. Go to the resource that resonates with you, because if you put Parkinson's into the computer, you're going to get 300 pages of information and you don't know where to start. Be specific. Always be specific. And whatever the particular consequences that you or your relative or friend is dealing with, go to your community within the neighborhood, because there are resources available and most people don't know what's around the corner.
Yeah.
And get a support group if you can.
Well, both as the person who's being cared for and the person who is doing the caregiving. Well, Dr. Marion, I can't thank you enough for coming on the Edge of Everyday podcast. I have a closing couple of beautiful quotes that I found. The first one is from Edgar Allan Poe, and it's very edge of every day. The boundaries which divide life from death are at best shadowy and vague. Who shall say where one ends and the other begins?
I applaud
Loved
that.
that. Loved that. It was so edge of every day. And well, we just love Edgar Allan Poe. And the other one is from one of my most favorite poets, Mary Oliver. When death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore, I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
They're both beautiful.
Well, more importantly, thank you for coming on the show and speaking about your incredible career and sharing your warmth and your knowledge and wisdom with us here at the Edge of Every Day. Any last words of wisdom?
Believe me, it was my pleasure.
Any last?
Invite me back. Invite me back. I'll come and share more.
Oh, good. Well, we would love that. So, are those your last words of wisdom?
No,
Invite
I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and I think they're wonderful.
Oh,
They are very, very wonderful. I took the time to look through them and listen to them. You have a great deal to offer and share, and you are on target
Thank you.
with your concepts.
Thank you. That's really very kind of you. Well, as you know, I just think the world of you, and I'm thrilled that we were finally able to make this happen. And
it did take us some effort.
listeners, it was some work. That being said, again, my gratitude, and I say to my listeners, remember, you are always at the edge of the miraculous. Until we speak again, take good care.
Thank you.
Pressing down on you, no man has fought.